morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier, bakery influencer for BAKERpedia. And today we will answer questions sent from the bakers and answered by yours truly. So let's get started with today's questions. So our first question is someone wants to know is there a way of calculating the fiber increase ratio to carbohydrate to achieve a zero net carb status? Like how much inulin to add to the wheat flour to get 14% carbs and 14% fiber. So basically the question is about the trend that we're seeing everywhere about net carb. People who say zero net carb or five, lowering the carb, which is part of the keto diet trend. And let's get into that a little further. So what does that mean to have zero net carb? So the net carb claims they're about the amount of non-fiber carbs per serving, and they're calculated as a total carbohydrate minus any dietary fiber and sugar alcohol. So based on the FDA, again, they have no authority to say, hey, you can't make a net carb claim provided that these net carb claims are not misleading. In fact, done correctly, a net carb claim is nothing other than a combination of basically your total carbohydrate minus your dietary fiber, what's counted as dietary fiber. So, and you can see on any packaging, there's a way to do that. So you can go and say, hey, what can I do to lower my net carb? It has to do with dietary fiber. Ingredients like psyllium, inulin will be great to lower your total net carb. But be careful as you do it, the way the bread is going to rise, the way the bread will stale, the shelf life, and the way the bread will eat will be changed. So that will require a certain amount of R&D and testing. It's not just about adding one ingredient and then saying, hey, it's done. So there's a lot of trial and error, understanding how they're going to perform, how they're going to make a bread. And at the end of the day, as long as the customers like it, and then you can calculate your net carb, since as I read under FDA regulations, there's no true definition other than basically taking the total carbohydrates minus the dietary fiber, and that's what will be your net carb per serving. So hopefully it answered your question, but thank you for sending it. So now, as our second question, someone wants to know, can you tell me why cookies spread more when the batch size gets bigger? And they're saying all ingredients and temperature are kept at the same, and so is a mixing method. So it is something that I've experienced quite a lot in my years in R&D. That's why in R&D you would do small batches, 10, 20 pounds in the lab. And then as you move up to the line, and that's why we're testing it, we're trying to measure the differences. So as you're scaling up, what are the changes? And what you don't see is as you get a larger batch, you will see the mixing, even though it's still the same principle, the RPM, the rates per minute at which the mixer is working might be different. I'm not saying they are, even though the mixers are the same, but your rate, your RPM might vary. So which would create more friction and more shearing, which would affect the spread. And how ingredients are being also incorporated. And as a batch is longer, to process a batch, when you do a 10-pound batch, let's say in the lab, in order for the cookies to be deposited, let's say even if I use an ice cream scoop, it would take me, for 10 pounds, and let's say it will take me 15 minutes to scoop it all on a sheet pan. Now you go from 10 pounds to 100 pounds. And if you still do it, unless you have an automated system, if you still do it with a scoop, that means the cookies will hydrate longer. And that means the hydration rate will vary of how much water moves around, how much time are they sitting on the floor. And if you're cooking your cookies, you do have anything like, either baking powder or baking soda, that will also be reacting, as it was discussed in different articles that I've done. As soon as you bring the water together with any leavening system, it will start moving. So there's a lot of small factors, even though you're thinking my temperature is the same, but as I'm scaling up, I'm seeing differences. So often to correct it is maybe to do a little changes, because spread is really dictated by the sugar and the amount of fat. So you could change that, or depending on the type of oven you have. If you make a 10-pound batch, and even with rack ovens you bake it, the bake will be different, that versus a larger oven. Everything, as you scale up, your oven profile, mixing profile, and how long the batter will sit will be different, and all those small details will affect the product differently. And that's why I will reemphasize that it's super important to do the proper R&D, because sometimes you're getting a great result there, but as you go and scale it up, you'll see different results. And as with my personal experience of working for CPG brands, we used to do 3 large trial in the manufacturing facility, so meaning 3 full batches. So we'll take about 2 hours of line time just to check, to make sure that it worked when we scaled it up, and what did we need to modify. And even though we had another plant with the same system in a different town, we would retest and revalidate the same process on the larger scale, because equipment, processes, water, and people can make a difference in a finished product. And that's why it's super important to check it. But thank you for sending your question, and hopefully it's helpful for you. So, and now for our last question today, we have a question regarding butter. What are the benefits of using butter compared to using margarine? So there's many. I'm a big fan, being French, I'm a big fan of butter for many reasons, and I'm sure some people listening will feel exactly the same. First of all, butter is made from milk, so from animal protein and animal fat, and it has some protein, but it's from milk that is turned into butter. So the butter, the color, and the flavor will be determined by the feed that the cows have. So, but it has a lot of other advantages versus margarine is made with oil, and they're emulsified to solidify to get sort of a plastic, what I call plastic, a similar to butter texture, where it's not liquid like a canola oil or olive oil. So, and the most of margarines have a higher content of water compared to butter, which could make a difference. So, but overall, butter will give you better texture, better flavor, and better color. And the shelf life will vary on which fat source you're using, margarine versus butter. Cakes made with margarine tend to be denser and lighter in color, while cakes made with butter taste more buttery, but could be a little more tender. And based on the formula, it could be. Using butter will also, because of the sugar present in the milk, such as lactose, will help create more caramelization and color, and also in cookies will give you that crispy edge, which margarine will do not. So margarine-based cookies tend to be a little chewier and do like the flavor that butter will get. So overall, butter, whether or not it's being used in pie crust, in puff pastry, in croissant, will have a bigger advantage versus margarine. Margarine, on the other hand, can be easily purchased. It's not as big of a shortage, and the price will not fluctuate as much. And some margarines can be kept at room temperature and not like butter refrigerated. So for every operation of bakeries, a lot of those factors have to be taken in place to see what would be the best margarine or the margarine of fat. But remember, if you've been doing everything with butter and you're switching to margarine, it might be difficult, and check with your consumers and customers as well, that buying your product every day, and whether or not, they like the alternative. So I hope helped. Thank you for sending your question, and you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you next week. Take care.